The Starr and D'Amico Show is brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. If you're looking for quality gear without overpaying, shop cheapesttshirts.ca. Huge selection for men, women, and kids. Tees, hoodies, headwear, bags, and more. Proud Montreal business. Order today, ship today, delivery tomorrow. That's cheapesttshirts.ca. Local, fast, and affordable. Brought to you by instacustoms.com. Do you need custom gear from a local Montreal business? Instacustoms.com has you covered. Custom shirts, hoodies, hats, and more made your way. Fast turnaround, great quality, and proudly Montreal-based. Check out instacustoms.com. Brought to you by Cabletel. For trusted alarm systems in Quebec and Eastern Ontario, choose Cabletel. Over 20 years of expert installation and top-tier protection for homes and businesses. Check out Cabletel.com. Email them info@Cabletel.com. It's Cabletel. Peace of mind you can count on. Brought to you by Morella's Steakhouse. Looking for an unforgettable night out? Morella's Steakhouse on Highway 132. It's just 15 minutes from Montreal, serving up premium cuts and bold flavors, and no tax on your bill. Book your table tonight at morellassteakhouse.ca. Taste excellence tonight. Brought to you by Little Bear. Give your pet the best with Little Bear Pet Supply. It's a proudly family-owned business here in Montreal for over 30 years. Chuck, Evie, and their all-star staff have you taken care of with all the top brands at the best prices, and they really care for your pets. Shop online at littlebearonline.com or visit them on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. It's Little Bear Pet Supply. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Head over to McLean's Pub, 1210 Peel Street in the heart of downtown Montreal. Great food, cold drinks, and big games on all the screens. McLean's Pub, good times and great company. At long last, Marco D'Amico, the NHL season has arrived. 8 games on this Wednesday. That does not include the Montreal Canadiens. We got one more sleep to go before Matt Schaefer, Patrick Waugh, and the New York Islanders roll into town. But nice to see, Marco, after practice where Juraj Slafkovsky and Nick Suzuki recovering from their delayed trip to Miami and then back up to the Northeast. They get a day off. Oliver Kapanen there. But on Wednesday, the full slate of players, including Alex Newhook, and we have some new line combinations, Marco.
Absolutely. And so the top 3 lines, I guess, remain unchanged.
Yeah.
And we now see, and we've been talking about this, for a couple of episodes now, but it's what I figured. Alex Texier, Jake Evans, and the returning Alex Newhook.
Boom.
So Jake Alex squared.
That works for me.
But
I'll leave the math up to you.
First of all, for Alex Newhook, I think the Canadians to me lacked a little bit of speed up the wings in his absence, and I think he's going to be really good there. Where he's going to be able to bring that speed, that intensity, that two-way play. Like I feel like the Canadians' bottom 2 lines right now are well balanced and can play the defensive side of the puck and could take advantage of the offensive side of the puck. So I have no problem seeing Alex Newhook come back, and I think it'll be a big help to the PK as well. He was such an important factor on that before his injury. I think what we really need to start asking ourselves in terms of questions here is the Canadians have a really, notwithstanding Patrick Laine.
Yeah.
The Canadians have a really interesting situation when it comes to the 12 players that they have to dress on a nightly basis, because Zachary Bolduc is now on the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? What can we read it? Obviously, Alex Newhook's a welcome addition, clearly as he rounds out and seeing him on the second wave of the power play at Wednesday's practice as they try to get better. Brendan Gallagher still has his spot there. I know, we see it, regularly when we do our live shows and the chat and the frustration from Habs Nation, but we'll save that topic for another day as the Canadians get back to action on Thursday. But I mean, how do you think Zach Bolduc takes this? 23 points in 57 games. Of his 23, 6 have come on the power play with 3 goals there. I mean, I'm not here to argue in the defense of Zachary Bolduc. He's still a young man. I mean, I'm not going to call him, a bust or a bad decision by management to trade Mailloux for him. But right now, it was still Alex Newhook's job. How do we interpret the decision of Zachary Bolduc not playing on Thursday now?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate for him. I think he was starting to find his mojo before the Olympic break, started really factoring in more in 5-on-5 play, playing harder, going to those danger areas, but doing it in a way that's sustainable. Like when you have to think back to Bulduc's incredible post-Four Nations performance, right? He was one of the most performant rookies in the league. But you have to remember that a grand majority of that offense came on the power play, playing with guys like Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. You didn't see that day-to-day 5-on-5 ability. Like, what are you gonna do outside of special teams? Because let's call a spade, right? Unless certain referees are in town, most of the games is played 5-on-5. And you have to be able to impact that game at 5-on-5 on a regular basis, especially under Martin St. Louis. He did there was definitely an adjustment period. He's done a good job of that. But unfortunately, the numbers are the numbers. They just extended Alex Texier. Newhook comes back in the lineup. You're not going to take out rested veterans from the lineup that have performed, prior to the end of the Olympic break. What I would hope is that this is not a closed door scenario and that there will be a rotation eventually to draw guys in. And especially in a back-to-back setting, you have that luxury. I hope that we start seeing that, because you don't want to make the same mistake the Canadians made last year, where they overused a lot of their players and they were absolutely gassed by the time they got to the playoffs. I think you got to play it smarter. And I think this gives the Canadians options, but it must absolutely suck for a guy like Bulduc, who is really starting to find his stride.
Yeah, minus 11, and to your earlier point, he went into the break playing, a better brand of hockey. He had picked up 4 points in his last 5 games. Granted, none of them were goals, right? But on a team that does well and has done well consistently in terms of goals per game on the average, for him to be a minus 11, how much of this is goal prevention? How much of this is, again, back to your point about 5-on-5 play and Martin St. Louis trying to just get the best 12 guys that, yes, can keep scoring, but also prevent the damage, considering, let's put it mildly, how fragile sometimes the goaltending has been here.
I want to give Bolduc his flowers, first and foremost. That was an area of concern that I had. Just the defensive awareness, especially when he played on the first line with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, it was abundantly visible that things were moving a little quickly for him in the defensive zone, and knowing who to cover and what to do was a work in progress. And it's something that the Canadians have spoken about taking the time to work with him on. And they've been much more satisfied with that side of his game, I'd say in the last month. And we've seen some of his offense come off generating turnovers, off smart blocks, off getting in passing lanes. Sometimes it doesn't appear on the score sheet, and that's totally okay. But he's definitely like, I don't think you can look at Zachary Bulduc in the month of January and not see improvement. I think
Agreed.
that's where I'm
Agreed.
at. 5-on-5, there was improvement. I think this kind of it's like a neat, like you're stuck between two scenarios, because yes, there's improvement, but is there improvement enough in Martin St. Louis' eyes to force Texier to get scratched? I don't necessarily agree. Yes, Texier did not have a very good end to the month of January. He was injured. Obviously, he played through that injury until the very end.
Yeah.
So I don't take those performances into account. But when the argument is going to be, why not Gallagher?
I don't really have a strong argument. I'm kind of pro Gallagher, to be honest with you. I like the veteran presence. I like the responsibility, and I get it. The pace. He kind of is unique in the sense of, this is a very, very fast, and obviously it's the youngest team in hockey, and he's an outlier in both of those categories. But for a team that I'd like to see, Marco, be a little bit more rugged, that's where I'll come in and I'll defend Brendan Gallagher, in that he can do it more consistently than Zachary Bolduc can. He can play a more defined role for me than Zachary Bolduc can today. I'm not saying Bolduc can't, but in the here and now, I'm going to go with Gallagher for now.
I think the Canadians have the luxury right now of being healthy, something that they haven't had all season, and that most teams probably won't have all season.
Yeah, we're seeing it now, post-Olympics, and with guys out 4 weeks. Sidney Crosby, obviously the headline there.
Mikko Rantanen out a minimum of 2 weeks. Like that's the benefit. Yeah. That's the benefit of sometimes not having all your star players go to these events.
I agree.
Tampa and Florida, unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable the amount of talent that they had go there. I'm very interested to see how the season ends for them.
Yep.
But with the Canadians, they have that luxury, and that luxury can go away like this. And that's where you're going to need that depth. That's where you're going to need to be able to be like, Zach, you're in, because opportunity is what allows you to really kind of rise above. He's going through it right now in terms of trying to find his role, trying to find his place, trying to find some consistency. But there's, sometimes when you watch from up top, I know it's the most like cop out excuse on the planet that coaches will use that fans do not buy. But there is something, having spoken to the players, that is real. Sometimes when you pull yourself out of it and you look at it from up top and you think about it and you have time to analyze and you have time to self critique and you have time to think outside of playing every second day or 3 out of 4 days or 5 out of 6 days or 7 days. Sometimes the schedule just doesn't allow for that kind of mental reset. I think this is going to be, I don't say beneficial, but I think it's going to afford Bolduc the opportunity when injuries inevitably will come, that he's going to be able to draw in. And I think he's going to be an even better player because he's going to have that extra motivation to show, hey, I can be in the starting lineup on a regular basis.
A reminder to go to Morella Steakhouse on Instagram and check their pinned post. We have a VIP giveaway that we're in the midst of doing right now. The draw will be there on March 12th because Marco and I will be broadcasting live from Morella's on Highway 132, 15 minutes from Montreal. But go to their Instagram page, see their pinned post. We're giving away 2 tickets to see the Habs and Bruins with luxury transportation to and from the game and $200 to spend at one of the best steakhouses, if not the best. It's the Steakhouse of Starr and D'Amico at Morella's Highway 132. What about Zachary Bolduc again, as we, kind of round out our thoughts here on this Wednesday with the Canadiens practicing and Alex Newhook now on the roster. So it's 23 men on a 23-man roster. Laval's not an option for Zachary Bolduc. We can clean that up.
No, he's no longer eligible to be sent down to Laval. His waiver count has kicked in. So he would have to go through waivers to go through Laval, which is not happening. And it was never really in the cards. Like,
right.
There's one thing when you have a top, let's call it what the Canadiens are at forward. They're one of the top teams in the East. And it's something to be said. And, when you're a top team in the East, sometimes there are players on the outside that are scratched that want in or that deserve to be in that just aren't. And I get that. But man, again, what makes top teams is good depth. And maybe it's because it's in the moment and we're reacting. And I feel all the fans. I get the argument. I absolutely get the argument. If you had to put a gun to my head, I'd probably put Bulduc in the lineup knowing where this team is going long term. Right? I think, you want my honest opinion, I think they have too many right shots
right
on that team. And maybe having more left shots could help them. But where I think it comes into play with a little bit more clarity for me is, I remember the Canadiens down the stretch last year and how injured some of those players were and couldn't be afforded any type of rest before the end of the season.
Right.
If done properly with a healthy rotation, the Canadiens can assure that everybody gets a good amount of games before it really starts to count in the last month of the season, because that to me is really going to be the most indicative is what they're going to do then. And I would hope that when we look back on it after, we say, okay, well, I get it. You have 14 healthy, 15 if you count lining, 15 healthy forwards, and you can go for it and you can rotate them in. But ultimately, I think young players thrive when they rise above this kind of adversity. And I'm not saying that Martin St. Louis is doing it because he's expecting that. I'm saying that's what I expect of Zachary Bolduc because I like this kind of player. And I think his toolkit, if continued to develop properly, will be dangerous because he's never going to be, he's not going to be that premier top 6 player, or at least that's not what he projects to be. But if he's going to be that third line scorer that's going to bring that edge and that physicality, well, that comes with time. Yes, it comes with reps, but it also comes with reevaluation of one's game. And I hope that that's what he's able to do during this time, because I think sooner than later, he's going to have his opportunity to draw back into the lineup and show that he probably shouldn't have been out in the first place.
To that point, though, about Zachary Bolduc, that, in the world of the Canadiens, still kind of developing their talent, you know what it says to me, and feel free to disagree, I suppose, but it's quite clear, as Ken Hughes has said himself, that when it comes to the lineup, Marco, that's MSL's job, and MSL, I
Mhm.
guess, is filling up the lineup card starting Thursday against the Islanders that he feels is the best group of 12 players that that he sees will help them win, as opposed to a 23-year-old Zachary Bolduc, not experimenting, but kind of living with the growing pains. When you have Alex Newhook and Alex Texier, I guess that in MSL's opinion, that's the card that's going to give him the best shot to pick up 2 points, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it was similar to Alex Newhook's situation, not last year, right? Not a very convincing season. Knew that he had to adapt his role, and then came into this season having a clear idea of what his role would be, his identity would be, and it had helped him thrive, right? I think becoming more of that two-way player is what allowed Alex Newhook to have the kind of season that he was having, because he was feeding off his words. He was feeding off the success on the PK, and that gave him confidence to be offensive at 5-on-5. And that's exactly what we saw. Well, I feel like that will eventually be the same case for Zachary Bolduc. No one's throwing in the towel immediately. Absolutely not. And I don't think this is a sign of things to come.
Right.
But I think they've just extended Texier. Newhook is coming back. Gallagher is rested and was already playing great hockey by the end of it. Anderson, playing good hockey, and you're not going to take out Deneau. So I understand why. I understand the logic. The one thing that I will just maybe add, when we're starting to argue about who should be on the Canadians' fourth line,
Yeah.
man, is that a good problem to have.
Agreed. Yes. Yes, especially when your top 2 lines are locked in. Like they're locked in, locked
And
in.
even their fourth line, I would say, is locked in.
Is it though with like I mean, who Texier, Evans, and Newhook?
You could call that their fourth line, but I think we can all agree that Jake Evans in this
Yeah.
scenario is
Yeah.
probably being positioned in a more offensive role, and that the Deneau, Gallagher, Anderson
Anderson.
line
Right.
seems to be like more of the shutdown line,
Mm.
and that to me would probably be fourth line.
I mean, is it wrong to feel disappointed a little bit? A 23-year-old in Zachary Bolduc who was so instrumental in terms of his productivity for the Blues last year to get them into the playoffs with, how dangerous he was, how many goals he scored for that organization at 22 years of age, that he more or less, Marco, lost his job to a guy like Alex Texier, who was released for the purpose of contract termination and caught fire in Montreal. And I mean, I feel I got to think he feels a little disappointed that he kind of right now lost his job.
I mean, that's the NHL. You got to rise above. You got to be better, right? Like that's the thing is we would if there will be times in a player's career where you're going to need to up the ante a little bit. Some youngsters do it faster than others. It's completely understandable. But where the Canadians were in the month of November, it made absolute sense to sign Alex Texier. Now, we could have discussions all day about whether or not it was the right time to extend Alex Texier. That's a completely different story.
Agreed. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but when it comes to the lineup now, absolutely. And especially the way that he was playing prior to his injury, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, if he has a similar next week or two to what he showed us in the Olympics, of course, only NHL player to play for Team France, no points in those games. Maybe we're having a different conversation then. But you give the benefit of the doubt to the veteran that has shown you something that you could tangibly appreciate and that knows his role and that could play that role, as opposed to experimenting with the younger player. They're not there anymore, unfortunately. And that's what leads to decisions like what we're about to see for tomorrow with Zachary Bolduc, splitting his term. But what I will say is the Canadians have 6 back-to-back situations
Correct.
between now
Yeah.
and the end of the season.
Yeah.
If they're in a playoff situation, maybe they give them a couple more reps. But if the Canadians get into the playoffs, I find very little argument to not go with Brendan Gallagher in the first round in the playoffs, playing next to Deneau and Anderson, unless there's injury
Mhm.
because of that experience.
Mhm.
Because you can't just be a team of 22, 23-year-olds. You can't do that. You're going to need that experience. And I feel like that will win out. But like we saw with Cole Caulfield, when he was out then in 2021 after Game 4. I think that it's very interesting to allow for those opportunities because that's when players are able to come in aggressively, jumpstart, have that adrenaline, and maybe it draws something, maybe it creates something, and that's the kind of game that I feel Bolduc can play. But now it's about finding that consistency, and unfortunately, Martin St. Louis doesn't have the time to, I would say, foster that consistency. He needs to find it on his own. This is a different era in this Montreal Canadiens rebuild. And unfortunately, these decisions, which probably wouldn't have been the case a year or two ago, come into play.
Competition should bring out the excellence. Should push you. As you pointed out.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the National Hockey League. Don't go sit and cry in a corner. Step up
and he doesn't. I will say, like, he does not do that.
Yeah.
He does not do that. He's taken it in stride. He's shown improvements, and I think there's still many other layers to add to his game, and I'm confident that he'll be able to do that. But as we've seen in the NHL, sometimes it just doesn't all come right away.
We're going to have some trade talk coming up on the channel on Thursday. Some Eastern Conference teams, some Atlantic Division teams ready to perhaps make some waves. And do they crash on the shores of the Montreal Canadiens? And I hope they have their life preserver and their rowboats ready to go. We'll dive into that. So make sure you like and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a daily drop. And great to be back. We'll do some lives on Friday and the aftermath of the Canadiens reopening the NHL season. Game day tomorrow. And we'll be here to recap it live on Friday. Make sure you check that pinned comment in our comment section for the details, a direct link to our VIP contest to go see the Habs and the Bruins with luxury transportation and $200 at Morella's. Our VIP giveaway, the announcement on March 12th, will be live at Morella's from 6 to 7 p.m. If you're in the hood, come by and say hi. Good stuff, Marco. Looking forward to our conversation on some trade talk and then ready to recap the Habs and Islanders. We'll see you later.
Sounds like a plan. Have a great day, everybody.